We are talking Anthony Richardson here on the Rich Eisen Show. John Beck, quarterback guru, some would say. Can Anthony Richardson be a day one NFL starter? No, he cannot. You know, it's kind of interesting. The NFL draft is slowly becoming the NBA draft, I think. You know how the NBA draft, you'll take someone like 6th overall with no clue if they can play. Strictly a project. And if they become a role player, if they become a journeyman, you're like, damn, good pick. All right, we got someone to stick in the league. The NFL is not like that. The NFL should not be like that. The NFL should be, if you whiff on the 6th overall pick because you took some project quarterback or some project whatever, that is a huge detriment to your franchise. Somehow people, and by people I mean the media, they're getting them confused. Like, they're getting them way confused, where a guy like Anthony Richardson can be in the conversation, media-wise, for the 1st overall pick. And most people are saying, will he go 1st? Will he go 3rd? Will he go 6th? Will he go 9th? No one is saying, like, yeah, this guy's probably like a 25th overall pick kind of guy. Like, this guy is, I don't know about this. It's just blowing my mind how that's where we are now. Like, that's where we're at now. People are just throwing away these picks, these early picks in the NFL, to take these project players, Trey Lance and Anthony Richardson, things like that. There is no way Anthony Richardson can be a day one NFL starter. Like, is Anthony Richardson that much better than the NFL or the rookies from last year's NFL draft? Is he that much better than Malik Willis? Is he that much better than Trey Lance? Is he that much better than these guys? Because we saw Malik Willis. We've seen Trey Lance. These guys are not day one NFL starters. So I haven't seen anything that tells me that Anthony Richardson is leaps and bounds above them. You know, I just think this is a narrative that I'm not totally sure how much this narrative is true and how much this narrative is strictly a media thing.
If you don't mind, I know you don't coach him. The idea is that he needs some time.
Yes,
maybe
very much so.
You said you were on you told the Dolphins put you on the quote unquote Aaron Rodgers plan when they drafted you. Do you think he does need to sit?
Here's what I'll say about all quarterbacks.
Look, before he says it, I'll say it. And I've been on record saying this a million times on this channel. I think it would benefit all quarterbacks to sit. I think, perfect world, all quarterbacks sit 8 games to a year, get themselves together. I think it's very difficult to imagine a kid coming into a totally new team, finding a new place to live, moving, new teammates, new locker room, new way to work, new building, new everything, new coaching staff, new playbook, new offense, new defense. Everything is different. To expect them to come in and immediately be good is tough. So I think it would be really beneficial to have those players sit, get used to life, then get used to the NFL, get used to their own team, get some reps in, and then after half of a year or a year, okay, let's see what you can do, kid. Let's see what you can do. No doubt about that. Unfortunately, in the day we live now, a top 10-ish quarterback is expected to play week 1. Minimum, probably like week 4, week 5, I would say. But it's shifted. So I think that's what he's going to say.
I think it helps all quarterbacks to spend some time learning, developing, growing, watching somebody run the offense effectively. I know that there's those guys.
I'm telling you right now, guys, I mean, does it get any better than me? Is there anybody in the space that can consistently do this like me? I mean, it honestly shocks me every time it happens.
Guys like a Matt Ryan, a Joe Flacco, a Justin Herbert, where they play early and you look at it and things are working, right? A lot of the times, run game, defense, play pass, like those things can help a young quarterback. But let's say you don't have those things, right? It's just, it makes it tougher. I look at Anthony and I see somebody that's extremely talented, right? You don't have
Anthony Richardson, no doubt, is talented. No doubt he has physical tools. No doubt about that, 100%. But I don't think he's there. I know he's not there. I know he's not there to come in and dominate and be good and be productive at the very beginning. And when you throw someone in like that and they're not ready, what it creates is lack of self-esteem, lack of confidence, second guessing, hesitation, losing the locker room. The fan base doesn't like the person. All that can trickle in. And then that makes it even harder. Some of the people he listed and some of the people who I remember coming in and being good early, like Ben Roethlisberger, they're coming into a set team. They're coming into a team not in turmoil. They're coming into an organization very much set in their foundation. They're coming into usually a run-heavy, defense-oriented team where they don't have to be the man. All right? Other teams, they draft a quarterback, make them play immediately, and they put the entire weight of the offense on them, which is incredibly unfair. Incredibly unfair.
You don't have to be a quarterback coach to be able to recognize physical gifts. The guy's physically talented. I've never sat in the meeting room with him. I've never sat in the offensive, watching the game after the game, going over stuff with him. I don't know how he processes, but you look at talent and you say, based off of what I know about quarterbacks and how much it can help a quarterback to spend some time, I would assume that he would be a guy that, with given the right time, it's going to benefit him, especially if he can watch somebody perform it successfully. I think one of the toughest things is when you're playing young as a quarterback in a struggling situation, you're not watching the offense run the way that maybe like it can be efficiently.
Yes.
You're watching the offense kind of sputter. Okay, now it's your turn to go in and see if you can make something happen.
Well, it's also like, I would, again, I'm guessing here, but I would think a young quarterback's coming in, they're focused on like, holy shit, am I doing my stuff right? Like, am I managing the play clock? Am I getting the right play in? Do I hear the right plays? I just started learning these plays. Am I saying the right things? Am I looking at the right person? Am I lining up the right way? Am I doing all this right? Am I converting first downs? Am I making good throws? Am I on time? It's hard enough to think about that. But then to think about, okay, now let me move around the protection. Let me make sure the offensive line is where they need to be. Let me make sure the receivers are where they're at. Let me make sure all this is set. Let me now think about like the game clock and think about the pace. Like, let me think about all that stuff. It's way too much, I think. It's way, way, way too much. And the difference between today's day and age and like Roethlisberger's time is the offenses are way more complex now. Like, offense is way more complex. It's much more motion. It's much more pre-snap, something we talk about a lot. It's much more pre-snap movement. It's much more kind of this like, RPO, or this like your read. Everything's a read. Everything is multiple routes. Everything is based on something else. It's not the old school of like, he's running a go route, he's running a cross route, he's running a curl. All right, ready, 1, 2, 3, hike. Right? It's not like that. Now it's, I'm shifting this guy over. If this protection is this, he's motioning back this way. Then he's running either a go route or a post route. Then this guy over here, depending on what that person's doing, I'm also motioning. I'm read optioning here, and then I'm play actioning around to look at this. It's just a lot happening per play. So I think Richardson or any young quarterback would struggle not seeing that and just having to do it first.
Well, when you're a young quarterback and you're being asked to do better than a veteran that's been there before, and he's sputtering, that can be tough. So to him, I think, man, like getting him in a situation where he can watch somebody run an effective NFL offense and learn and grow from that, and especially have a veteran quarterback that's willing to share. Sometimes a quarterback can kind of like put his foot in the ground and say, I'm not here to mentor a young guy. That's not my job. I'm here to win football games. And I respect that mindset, right? That's why they're being paid millions, to win football games.
Right.
But there's also those guys that they understand, I was once a young guy. I know what it's like to have questions. I know what it's like to...
I'm surprised this hasn't happened yet. But I think that moving forward, you'll start to see these specialists that do this, that are basically mentors, that are basically, they understand that the game is past them. They understand that their best days are behind them. They still want to play, but they're not competing to try and be an all-star or a Pro Bowler or an MVP. And they're willing to go team from team, be a decent, viable starter, but they're there strictly to mentor the younger guys. Like, I'll just name a player. Like Andy Dalton. Okay? Andy Dalton can play decent enough in the NFL. But Andy Dalton is he's not a guy who it's like, okay, Andy, show me what you can do, and then we'll get you a big contract and you can try and compete for a Super Bowl. Of course, everyone wants to win, but I would think someone like Andy would benefit from saying, look, I am willing to be the guy who, you draft a first-round quarterback, you draft a guy, sign me, I'll come in, I'll play, and I'll be that kind of on-field mentor. If there was a batch of those quarterbacks, I think they would be so valuable. If you had your Ryan Fitzpatricks, your Andy Daltons, your people like that who have been around, who are veterans, who have seen everything, and they are willing from day one to mentor that quarterback, and they know the end game. That to me is so much better than just nameless, faceless backup. And I really am shocked that hasn't become like a thing in the NFL.
They try to learn. And that's why somebody like, I played with Josh McCown. I know he's going to be a fantastic coach because he's been that guy. He was that guy for Sam Darnold. He's been that guy for so many young quarterbacks.
Not a great example.
I'm here to win football games, but I also understand what it's like to be in your shoes. I'll help you develop. I do think for Anthony, that can help.
Well, Vegas might be a spot for him, and obviously Jimmy G might fit that.
Yeah.
Good.
No, he wouldn't. Damn it, Rich. Like, damn it. No, Jimmy G is still a guy competing for himself. He's still competing for a contract. He's still competing for Super Bowls. He still wants to win. He still wants to be a starter. He's just coming out of a situation where that's the reason he's gone, is because he wants to be a starter. He doesn't want to be that mentor. That's a terrible example. Like that's the opposite example of who we're talking about here. The right example is someone like Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco was with the Jets, right? Joe Flacco could be a guy where it's like he's already had his big contract. He already won the Super Bowl. He knows who he is. Joe Flacco might be a guy where you draft an Anthony Richardson, you go get Joe Flacco, right? You go get him. Like Cam Newton wants to play. Cam Newton wants to be a starter. Cam Newton thinks he's still a starter. So Cam Newton wouldn't be that guy. We've seen Cam Newton now auditioning to be a starter in the NFL. So he wouldn't be a guy that you go get and you say, hey, mentor this quarterback, because Cam wants to be the starter. It's a unique kind of player, but that's someone that people need. Joe Flacco is someone that comes to mind. Andy Dalton is someone that comes to mind. But Jimmy Garoppolo is certainly not.
Good guy, veteran who wants to win games, but will help somebody develop, although they would have completely different skill sets, I would think. And then there's the idea that he might wind up in Indianapolis, where there's a new head coach, Shane Steichen, who did have Herbert, as a quarterback's coach when he was a rookie. We just saw what Jalen Hurts was able to do over the last couple of years. Yep. But there's no veteran that's sitting right there, pretty much, right?
No,
Go get one.
Is totally bare on that front.
I love Shane. I've known Shane for a long time, and I think he's great for young quarterbacks. Like you said, helping develop Justin Herbert, really getting Jalen really on.
I'll tell you what, if I was Shane Steichen and I'm a head coach and they're telling me, like, we're going to draft you this huge project, I would say, I don't know about that. No way. Like, Jalen Hurts got developed, but he got developed totally differently. He was a late round pick or a second or third round pick. To draft an Anthony Richardson in a team that's completely bare of quarterbacks, you have to have him play. I don't think that's what, if I was Steichen, I would not want that. I would not want that at all. I don't think it's a good fit. Just because he's done it with Hurts, I don't think it's like, oh yeah, he'll do it with Richardson. I think that's not true.
On that track to be a premier player in the league that he is. So he's a guy that does have experience, but you're right. Like, Indy probably has some things that they have to figure out in terms of that quarterback room. If they do bring in a top pick at quarterback, is their plan to start him right away? Is their plan to have a veteran there? I mean, I just think and I know you and I talked a little bit of Zach Wilson during the break, right?
Yes.
Like, I look at a player like Zach who has tons of talent. Like, it would have benefited him when he first got to New York to have a veteran there that could really kind of just him watch and learn from, because you learn so much from watching a guy go out to practice, watching how he functions in the meeting room, watching how he watches his own tape, being able to.
Yeah, I mean, people forget about that part of it. Everything that people talk about is like on the field, watching a player play, watching the offense, watching this. I know for me, and not even in the NFL, but just like a job. The first 6 months, you're learning where to park, you're learning where to eat lunch, you're learning where to go to the bathroom, you're learning, what people wear, how people act, you're learning all that stuff. You can't even really do your job at the fullest until a couple months in, because you're worried about figuring out all that stuff. It's got to be the same for the NFL. If I was a quarterback like that, I mean, that's another thing people don't think about. Anthony Richardson was playing in Florida. So let's say he gets drafted by the Indianapolis Colts. He's got to figure out, where the hell am I going to live? He's got to figure out moving to Indy. He's got to meet all of his new coaches. He's got to meet all of his teammates. He's got to get a whole new playbook. He's got to the stresses of just leaving his family and friends and going to a new place, and what the hell am I going to eat for dinner? Like all those things are minor life things, but they happen. Like they're a part of being a pro. So having somebody that can show you, hey man, like this is how I get to the arena. This is where the stadium. This is where I park. You come in here. You can get breakfast here. Go down here. This is the film room. This is how you turn on the TV. Like stuff like that. Like I know at my work, a lot of people they're new people. Like how do I turn on the screen in the conference room? Stuff like that. Like you can't expect them to come in day one and be ready to do some insane presentation when they don't even know how to turn on the damn TV. So it's got to be the same. And there's got to be, it's crazy because these are multi-billion dollar teams. And to put that much pressure on one player, you think they would also take the steps around it of like, okay, if we're going to draft Richardson, we need to do just as much research and prep into figuring out who is the best veteran available that we can also sign and bring in. Who do we want in that quarterback room? Maybe you want a couple of them. Maybe you want to get a Andy Dalton, but you also want to hire whoever, Josh McCown, to just be in the quarterback room and just be there for him, just strictly as a Anthony Richardson coach. There's so many coaches, or there's so many people on the roster who are like quality control coach, or we've all seen the coaches now who are there strictly to hold the coach back so they don't get a penalty. We've seen there's so many ridiculous positions. Why are there not positions built for these quarterbacks?
To ask him questions on the sideline. Like I remember being a second-year player in the league, a whole new staff comes in, they bring in Chad Pennington. Although that second year I never played in a game, I learned so much from Chad Pennington.
Yeah.
Being a young quarterback in the league, having somebody that you can just watch and soak in information from helps so much. Some guys really need it.
Well, I want to put a pin in
100%.
Zach Wilson for a second, and we'll return to that. I'll pull the pin out in a second, which is not a euphemism for anything about what's going on with him in New York. But would you mind telling the story about when you first met Anthony Richardson? I kind of overheard you tell that story at the Combine.
Oh, yeah, that's right, the Combine. That's right. You were sitting by Daniel Jeremiah and I. That's right.
I just love this story.
I'm throwing with, I believe it was either Jay Kaner or Jaron Hall. We were warm, throwing in the Combine. Like, you have all those days leading up to the, the actual field day that you're not touching a football. So,
Yes.
We're throwing balls there in the convention center, let him throw a little bit. And this guy standing next to me is I think he was in a hoodie. I assumed it was a defensive player. I assumed it was a linebacker, and I'm throwing the ball back, and he's like, "Oh, still spinning it, huh?" And I'm like, "Oh, those days are past, man." I'm like, "This is their turn to do this." And the guy was super cool, super kind, and I'm thinking this is a defensive player leaving.
Yeah, he's huge. I mean, if you don't know Anthony Richardson, I think he's like 6'5", 260 or something like that. He is a physical freak. I mean, he does backflips. He's got a cannon of an arm, but as we know, that's a small part of playing quarterback in the NFL.
This meeting room, and he's just wanting to chat a little bit. And so I walk back over to the quarterbacks, and they go, "Hey, what did Anthony Richardson say to you?" And I was like, I didn't talk to Anthony Richardson. They're like, "That guy that was standing there in the hoodie, that was Anthony Richardson." And I was like, I thought that was a linebacker.
He's that big.
Yeah.
He's huge. I mean, he is Cam Newton. Like, as far as a physical freak, as far as a physically light years ahead of his peers, is Anthony Richardson.
Physically, just, he looks the part, right?
Wow. Jeez, he sure
Yeah,
does.
and it's no knock, right? Like, I'd watched a bunch of Anthony's games, but I'm watching with the helmet on. Like,
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I don't have everybody memorized without their helmet on of what they look like. And just based off of his structure, I mean, you see it in that picture, like the neck, the frame, how wide his shoulders were. I mean, I assumed I'm talking to a linebacker that's a, good dude wanting to chat it up a little bit.
I guess, and
No, he's the man. I mean, like I think Richardson. I think I mean, you can't have any more tools than this guy's got. No doubt about it. But he is raw, for sure. He wasn't dominant at the collegiate level. He's got flaws. He's not even, I always have a hard time when players aren't great at the college level to expect them to be great immediately in the NFL. I think that's a very tough ask to do. Same with Will Levis. Will Levis, he can spin it. One of the best arms in the draft. Physically there. Why wasn't he good at Kentucky? Is it because of the talent around him? Is it because of the coaching? I don't know. But that's a question you have to know as a team. Why was Anthony Richardson not able to be really, really good consistently at Florida? What's the answer? That's the question. What's the answer? And there might be an answer. You know, like Josh Allen at Wyoming. Some of the answers I've heard is that his receivers weren't good. I've heard his receivers dropped a ton of passes. I've heard his coaches weren't great. You know, I've heard all that kind of stuff. And then if there is an answer to the question, fine. You know, like you don't have to be dominant at the collegiate level. You don't have to. You don't have to win the Heisman. You don't have to win a national championship. But if you don't, and I'm going to take you in the top 10, I need a reason. You know, I need a reason of why that was the case. If Anthony Richardson's reason was level of competition, if his reason is playbook was confusing, if his reason is didn't like my teammates, you know, like those are concerning things, but those could be possible answers. So I mean, it's just one of those things you have to check. You know, you have to check. And with Richardson, there's a lot of questions. I think he's going to be really good. Or I think, excuse me, let me take that back. I think he has all the tools to be really good. But it's, for me, if I was in the front office, way too risky, way too unknown to take in the top 10. I'd be fine taking him in the bottom of the first round, kind of like how Lamar Jackson was taken at the bottom, and you knew it was kind of like Lamar. It's funny how much things have changed. Lamar was much better in college than Anthony Richardson, but Lamar was never discussed as being a top 10 pick. Lamar was discussed as being a wide receiver. Lamar was being changed into a wide receiver or a running back, and he fought to be a quarterback, and then ends up getting taken. Remember, the Ravens took, I think, Hunter Henry before Lamar Jackson. So they took Lamar with their second first-round pick. All right, and now we've got a guy physically incredibly gifted, college, nothing crazy, and you've got some people saying not only should he be a first-round pick, he should be the first overall pick. Just crazy how much things have changed. Let me know in the comments below, guys. What do you think? Should Anthony Richardson, or can Anthony Richardson be a day one starter? It's crazy to even ask that question. Do you think he should be? If not, where should he go in the first round? And what would your plan be? Would your plan be to sit him for a year? Would your plan be to sit him for half of a year? What do you think about that? Let me know, ladies and gentlemen, in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I will see you on the next video.